Let us continue our shiur, call it part 2. We might revise a little bit of what we've mentioned before. Not only the new people here, also it helps for the flow of things. Yeah? So we up to now have discussed the 3 different opinions, how, at what point the food must be that it's not anymore considered like an isur, something which you're restricted to eat. So you can have meat totally taref. If it spoils, it becomes disgusting. It's ruined. Then at what point already do we say this is not considered a trefa anymore? This is not what God restricted in the Torah or not. So we had 3 different opinions, starting from the Pri Chadash, who was very lenient. He held once human beings don't eat it, it's not for human consumption. Already that's biblically permitted. The only issue is Bal Teshaketzu. You mustn't eat not nice things because it's not pleasant. And the Torah says, Al Teshaketzu et nafshotechem. So that seems to be that if you solve the problem and you mix it with something else, there's no anymore, it's not disgusting anymore. And you should know in our ingredients, if you go through the ingredients of any product you buy, there's quite a few ingredients which on their own it's disgusting. It's put for different reasons there. But if you put a small amount, it's not any more disgusting, there's no Bal Teshaketzu. That's a Pri Chadash, which is the most lenient. Then you go the middle of opinion, which holds it's still rabbinically restricted, even though biblically it's not, which is following Rabbi Shimon's opinion, like the Pri Chadash, but they're saying there's still a rabbinical prohibition to have things which are still fit for dog consumption. Then you've got the third opinion, which holds like Rabbi Meir, which is a Nodab Yudah. He holds until the food becomes unedible for dog consumption, only then is it permissible. So that means you need to really, has to be, and today we said it's very hard to assess this idea that it's not fit for dog consumption, because our dogs are raised in a very spoiled way today. They have special food from birth. But once upon a time, I told you, dogs used to run around the streets and would eat whatever, like the foxes. They would eat whatever was presented before them. So in order to get something which should be unfit for a dog, it's not that straightforward. We have to learn the salachat. The Tzvi Pesach Frank says, Mi Yomahul tell us that it's not fitting for dog consumption things. We don't know. Yeah, how do you test this exactly? We don't even know what is fitting for human consumption. Today it becomes fashionable to eat disgusting things, to eat things which you think years ago you wouldn't even touch them if they were not cooked, or if they were raw, or certain foods you wouldn't eat. And nowadays it becomes fashionable to eat it even human. So we leave that aside a second, okay? Then we went on to say perhaps we can tackle the problem of something which is not necessarily not fit with a different topic, a different subject. The concept of panim chadashot ba'u lekan. You know what panim chadashot means? Panim, face, new face.
New face.
Something new. This product is not anymore what it was, it becomes something else.
Baruch just came from Prague.
Yeah. Rabbi Yonah says like that. I think that's what we have to know. We started off in the question of Magen Abraham's, a few questions here. Rabbi Yonah says, I think we were up to the Magen Avraham. So just a quick summary on to get to the Magen Avraham's words. Yeah, there was a famous Rabbi Yonah Masechet Brachot, page 31b, which Rabbi Yonah explains what the Gemara discusses about the mushk, or mosque, or musk. Brachot. It's Brachot Lamidal. It's funny. It's in the Gemara in Talmud Brachot, because the Gemara there talks about the halachot which bracha you make on different kinds of fragrances or smells. So one of the smells was, and the Rabbi Yonah explains, it's Yesh Omrim, some say that it was a certain animal, wild animal, which near the glands collected some kind of ze'ah, some kind of a liquid, which got collected in the glands of this animal, and it was from the ke'en dam. It says it was blood, really, which collected, which eventually turned into something called musk. Yeah, Mem Vav Shin Kuf. And Rabbeinu Meir, which was the Rabbeinu Meir HaLevi, the Yad Ramah, he actually said, if this comes from blood, you're not allowed to eat it. Because it's like you're eating blood. And therefore, other than the issue of smelling, which is not a problem, you can smell something which you can't eat, you make bracha on it, but the discussion was, can you put this into your food? They used to put it for good smell in the food or for flavor. I don't know what they put it for, but it was placed into food. So Rabbeinu Meir says if it comes from blood, you can't put it into your food because you're not allowed to mix blood into your food. That's all.
Milk comes from blood as well.
Very good. That's the Magen Avraham. Quickly, I'll give you an introduction before we get to the Magen Avraham question. Baruch Hashem, you're thinking right. That means your mind is going back hundreds of years. Says the Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah says, I don't see a reason why it should be asur. Why? We can allow it, that even it was originally blood, we're not concerned because we judge the substance the way it is now. The concept is atar hashta azlina. We go after what the state of the thing is now. Does it look like blood? Does it taste like blood? It's something else. This is not blood anymore. Concept of atar hashta. And then he brings, I will bring you a proof, Teda. Doesn't say where the proof is from, but I will soon show you the proof is from the Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah. But it talks about the honey. A honey which you have in Isur, let's call it meat, taref, falls into honey. It says in the Gemara, according to some, we'll soon say it's subject to interpretation in the Talmud. If it mixes into honey, en hadevash asur, the honey doesn't become asur. That means even if you mixed it, either intentionally and there's more than 60, or even unintentionally and there's less than 60. Because if it fell unintentionally and there's more than 60, there isn't a problem. It's batel. Everything becomes nullified in 60. So we must say that there's no bitul here. Either there is more than 60, there's not a 60, and therefore it's not batel. Yet still, the honey is allowed. Why? Says Rabbeinu Yonah, Afal pi she'aisur nimoach, it melts down in the honey and it mixes into the honey because the nature, כיוון שדרך הדבש, the nature of honey, שדבר הנופל לתוכו דבש, it turns anything which falls into it into honey. Honey is so powerful that it turns everything into honey.
Do you need to majority of honey to have that happen?
Yeah, it seems to be here. The majority, yeah, definitely. אחרי רבים מעטות, you're right. But not 60. Even if you have, if there's no shishim, it's also okay.
Oh, so what's the measure?
Up to I think it's majority sur, minority honey. Then we've got a rule in the Torah. When we talk about tam and not tam and something like that, then you can start judging it. It's rov, it's rov. Rov is sur. Achre rabim le'atot. You can't allow something which the majority is in isur, even if it breaks down and it mixes in. But the majority is not something which is allowed.
Yeah.
Okay. So he says something, so we first have to understand where did Rabbeinu Yonah get such an idea about the honey? We'll discuss that in a minute, yeah? So he wants to say that we judge it like honey. So here, so too here, even though initially this was blood, but it turned into something else, and it's not blood anymore. And Batar Hashtaz Lina. So even though now it's giving positive flavor, this musk is giving positive flavor onto the product you're mixing it into, to the food, the tafshil, we're not worried because you're mixing something other than blood now. This is something new. Panim hadashot ba'u lekan. Doesn't use that expression, but that's what it means to say.
Yeah.
This is a new face. Yeah, that has been deformed and now it's something else. So says the Gemara, the Rosh was the one who argued with Rabbeinu Yonah. And he says, even his proof, which he bought from honey, needs a proof. I mean, you're proving your fact with something which is not necessarily reliable. You're proving it from somewhere where that in itself requires a proof. Re'ayatot, slicha re'ayah. Where do you get this idea that something falls into the honey, turns into honey? Wait. Even his proof needs a proof. And we question that the Rosh himself in the halachot of Pesach brings about, they used to have, in order to increase the quantity of the honey, they used to mix flour. And there was a whole debate amongst the halachic authorities. You got honey with flour inside it, chametz inside. So, question we talk about flour which was chametz, yeah? Because the question whether regular flour it's chametz or not is different. Let's say flour which was soaked in water, then it's chametz, and it was mixed. So the Rosh writes as follows. The Rosh writes, Udvash בפסח, honey on Pesach, לא ראיתי אדם נוהג בו איסור, משום חששה דעירוב קמח. So when probably the rabbi, the Rosh was in Spain or somewhere there, and he says they came to ask him, are you allowed to have honey on Pesach? Because we've heard that some manufacturers mix flour into the honey. So says the Rosh, I haven't seen anybody refraining from having honey.
It's kosher, no?
Huh?
It's kosher.
It's kasher. וגם, furthermore, נתבטל קודם הפסח. It's been nullified, even if they did mix honey into there. It's been nullified. And if we will say it's asur, and you can't nullify it, then you should be concerned about any honey. Didn't we say that honey, if you put something which is asur, and sometimes they had information that the goyim put nevelot into the honey. They used to put, I don't know why. So he says we shouldn't have any honey. So must be like Rabbeinu Yonah. That even if they did mix it, it breaks down and it becomes part of the honey. So even if they did mix flour, so he says, Batan hashta zina b'shari. The Rosh, who had a go at Rabbeinu Yonah about the mosque, is now using that same theory to allow the honey on Pesach. So it's very important to look at the language of the Rosh, because the Rosh, when he came to Pesach, there were two reasons why he allowed it. It's a backup, Rabbeinu Yonah. He didn't really like. He first says, why should they add on flour? Why should these people add on flour? If they get caught adding on flour, people won't buy it from them anymore. They buy it from the people who don't put flour. So he's mainly relying on the fact that it's not done. But he said, even if it's done, we've got a backup, which is called Rabbeinu Yonah. However, it's still difficult why the Rosh relied, but maybe he has his reasons.
Right.
I'm going to skip quickly to the Magen Avraham.
What about royal jelly, honey?
Sorry?
Jelly, and the royal jelly?
That's something
Does it
else.
get nullified?
That's not, that you should know. Honey is allowed because the Gemara says, you know the process of honey, it doesn't really bring it out from his body. It takes from the flour, there's a separation in the system. How the Chachamim knew that it's such a small insect, and they went and analyzed it. Because the Torah says you can. So it takes it in, breaks it up, and brings out pure honey. So he's not bringing from its body anything which is...
Rabbi,
The royal honey might be a different issue. It might be excretions from the honey, from the bee. And that's different. That's why you only find it by certain bees. So it's a
Does it
different
get
discussion.
nullified by the honey?
If it gets mixed, it depends. It'll be dependent on what we're going to discuss now. Okay, this is the key to that subject as well.
so
Yeah.
before, honey was a real commodity. Why? Because they took the honey from the pollen of the flowers
Yeah.
and they gathered together. But nowadays it's not like that, because all they do nowadays is put a pond with sugar water in there,
And the bees go
and
there.
the bees go there. So really, it's still considered pure honey because it's coming out of the bee. But it's from the sugar water pond, it's not really from the flowers.
So make the job easier for the bees.
Yeah, but does that not change the status of
Today-
the honey?
Today we make the job easier with machinery made for the bees. Isn't it? You know, there was once a story, I mentioned this a few times, there was a story which Ramon Chaliyahu told us once when he was a chief rabbi. The kid had a big problem. They realized that the honey was quite pale. The honey was quite pale. And then they worked out that there was a Strauss, the ice cream factory, which wasn't far from the beehives. It wasn't far. They had spoiled ice cream, which they had thrown away from the factory, and the bees were going there and getting from there and bringing it back. So the question was, whether the honey will be milky or not milky. Yeah. So there was will that process turn into not milky, to panim hadashot, or not panim hadashot? Okay, let's leave the honey to another time. You guys asking good questions. You can't learn the Torah on one leg. Now, let's go back to the Rabbi Magen Avraham. The Holy Magen Avraham, which is the commentary around the Shulchan Aruch, he breaks the Rabbeinu Yonah to different sections, and he questions on this whole concept. He wants to know, but he questions from sources. Rabbeinu Yonah said that we go after the state of the product now. We ignore the fact that it was once blood. He says, I can't understand that. I've got a question from the Talmud in Masechet Bechorot. The Gemara in Bechorot, page 6, says as follows. Chalav, the fact that we can drink milk is a chidush. We wouldn't take for granted you're allowed to drink milk. Why? There's a few reasons. One reason the Gemara brings, Dam ne'akar, with the chaf, v'na'asa chalav. The milk comes from the purest of the blood of the animal. So to baby's milk. When a baby breastfeeds, he's getting the blood of the mother. Once he got it through the pupik, now he gets it through the mouth. When he drinks the milk of the mother, drinking the purest, this milk is made from the blood. Dam ne'ekar v'ne'esa chalav. That's what the Gemara says, that they don't say midut when she's a meneket, because the blood turns into milk, and that's how the milk is produced. So the Gemara says it's a chidush. V'chi teiman elef mechalav. The Gemara says you want to learn any isurim out from milk? Milk is a chidush. So if that's the case, we have no pasuk allowing us musk. The Torah allowed us milk, which was a chidush. You can't learn that to anywhere else. The Gemara says you're limited only to milk, because specifically the Torah allowed only milk. So we see from here, had the Torah not allowed the milk, it would be asur, because it was once blood. So therefore, Rabbeinu Yonah, I'm sorry, if the musk comes from blood, the Torah never allowed the musk. So we must treat it like blood, because we don't go after its state now, we go what it originally was made from, just like by the milk. נכון? תגיד למה לא.
What about seal? Seal from fish.
Yeah, what about it?
אפשר לאכול את זה,
לא,
זה דם
if can you send me a tamelo?
מדג יהיה כשר.
From a kosher dog fish, yeah. What's the problem?
This animal you're talking about.
And seal doesn't come from blood.
No, this animal, the
Seal
musk.
comes from salt. Comes from something I don't know, salt water. I don't know where the seal comes from. Seal is the liquid which the fish produces, which is salty. There's something else. No blood, doesn't come from blood. Okay? Now, furthermore, now says Magen Avraham, perhaps you'll tell me that the musk is a pirsha be'alma, and really it's not food. It's something which is turned into something else completely, because it's not so edible. Just like כשרש"י ינקה מן הטרפה, דמותר להעמיד גבינות בקיבתה. Says, you can't say that. The Gemara in Tmura says as follows. Let's follow this idea, yeah? In a froach, if you have a chick, and I think this is where we left off last week, they have a chick which was born from a chicken which was a trefa. Let's say you had a chicken with one leg. It's taref. You have a chicken with 3 legs, it's taref as well. So if you have a trefa which laid an egg, so the egg, you're allowed to eat the egg? No, you're not. Came out from taref. The egg is taref, because the chicken was taref. Chicken and egg. So the chicken is taref. What about if it had and a chick came out from this? Can we have now the chick?
Yeah.
The Gemara says yes. אפרוח שנולד מביצת טרפה, דאמרין על כל כמה דלא מסרח. There, the Gemara says, the reason why you can have it is because on the process of the egg becoming a chick, it goes through a state where it becomes unedible completely. It becomes ma'us. The Gemara calls it misrah, saruah. So, ubeidna de tekagabi, afra be'almahu. That means the Gemara is saying, you know why you can have the new chick? Is because the egg went through a process that it became unedible completely. It became something which is like afar, like dust. And only then it became something else. So says the Magen Avraham, we see that had it not gone through a stage of it becoming totally disgusting, we wouldn't allow the chick. Even though the chick is a totally different product than the egg, and the egg is a different product of the chicken. So it panim hadashot, it should be something else, something new. Yet still we say it's asur because it has to go through a process. Now he says, are you going to tell me that that's what happens with the honey? That when you place that meat into the honey, which Rabbeinu Yonah said, it becomes disgusting and only then it turns into honey? You need a proof to what you're saying. So the truth is, this Rabbeinu Yonah is subject to an argument in the Talmud in Masechet Avodah Zarah. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah brings, the Mishnah says, you're allowed to have honey purchased from the non-Jews. You can go to the marketplace and buy honey. The Gemara says, what's the Hiddush? Why not? Says the Gemara, Devash lemay nechosh. What are we concerned about honey? Why shouldn't we be able to buy to the supermarkets or from the going honey? So the Gemara says, Imishu meiruve misre sari. If the concern is that they're mixing other products in the honey which are not kasher, i.e. meat or something which is taref into the honey, and that's why you might think you can't have the honey, the Gemara says it's misre sari. Now what does misre sari mean? What does misre sari mean? It means something gets ruined here. What is it referring to? So here we come to a big argument amongst the commentators of the Talmud. Whether the spoiling factor is going on the honey or on the meat which was thrown into the honey. Pay attention carefully. I'll explain. Says Rabbeinu Nisim, which has a commentary around there, Al-Fasi, at the back of the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Acherim pirshu, some explain, אם משום עירובה, שדרך הוא לערב בדבר שדברים אחרים ונימוך בתוכו וחוזרים דבר לקה למחש ואחי, לפי שהמתערב בו עד שלא נימוח מסריח ומותר. That means there's two explanations to understand the Gemara. Many explain that what the Gemara is saying, if you're concerned about something asur being placed into the honey, the nature of the honey is to kill off whatever falls in, to ruin it, and then it becomes part of the honey. So the Magen Avraham was in doubt, and he questioned, where do you know that? It is actually a commentary of the early Rishonim on the Talmud. That when you mix something into honey, the honey has got power of making the meat masriach, and then once it becomes disgusting, it becomes part of the honey. So it goes through a process of becoming disgusting, similar to the chick and the egg. It goes through a process. That means, based on this idea, bear in mind, that whenever you come to mix something into food, and it goes through a process of being disgusting, it has to go through being not ra'ui at all, like afra be'alma, means to the worst, and only then will it be okay if it got mixed into something else. So we're talking about the process of making the gelatin and the process of the collagen. We'll still, in a second, we'll talk about this.
It means that the meat inside, got rotten inside the honey, is not considered a meat anymore because it's rotten.
Right, correct. Correct, that's exactly what they're claiming happens.
Yes.
So put
Now you should know.
non-kosher meat, then what?
We talk about non-kosher meat. You put the guy put
Once
his
it's
meat
rotten,
into
it's
the
not
honey,
meat. It's not
but
meat, it's like
because
a
the honey broke up the meat in such a way that it made the meat disgusting, so the meat became something not ra'ui lema'achal, became like the dust of the earth, and then it became part of the honey. So that means for something to become allowed afterwards, it goes through a state. It has to go through a state that is absolutely unedible. So that opens your eyes a little bit to what you're thinking, probably quickly to apply it to different things. Now wait. Slowly, slowly.
Gelatin.
And I think a lot of the Rishonim, in fact, many Rishonim on the Talmud and Avodah Zarah say that's not the explanation in the Gemara. When it talks about the concern of mixing something misresari, it says no. It means that the goy will never mix something of meat or anything into the honey because the honey will become disgusting.
Makes sense.
The exact opposite of this whole idea. Mapitom, honey is very sensitive. If you will put a piece of meat which is taref into the honey, it will ruin the honey.
Why would you downgrade the honey?
Downgrade the honey, you make it disgusting. So therefore you can go to the street, not have the concern that the guy has mixed something which is asur into the honey. Because the honey would get spoiled. I mean, this is a totally different explanation to the Gemara, which throws away any other theory of things mixing and becoming panim chadashot or becoming something new. No such thing, that's not what the Gemara is saying. But we'll go with the Ran, because Rabbeinu Yonah, that's what Rabbeinu Yonah meant. When Rabbeinu Yonah says that with a musk, it says that when you go through a process, now, the question is, do we say that's the halakha? So now, the Ran says, תדע, שהרי דבש אם נפל בו חתיכה של איסור, אין הדבש אסור, אף על פי שהאיסור נברא אותו, כיוון שדרך הדבש דבר שנופל לתוכו, a few different Rans I found, which brings that. Yeah? Now, says the Bach, the Bet Hadash says, you remember the Rosh question, that his proof needs a proof. Now we begin to understand what he meant. The Rosh was saying, that interpretation in the Talmud in Avodah Zarah in regards of the honey is subject to a discussion whether that's the interpretation in the Talmud. That's what the Rosh says. Even your proof from honey needs a proof. Because who says that that's what the Gemara means? But the Bet Hadash, who lived 500 years ago, he says that the Rabbeinu Asher, the Rosh, would agree to the Rabbeinu Yonah if really you'd prove me scientifically that something gets ruined before it becomes something else, then that would be okay. That he'll agree. There's no argument about that. Okay? So that he'll agree that if you really have proof that the musk goes through a process of it being unedible anymore and then it becomes something else, then you'll allow that. But we have no proof to say that that's what happens. So you should know many Acharonim, which includes the Radvaz, and the Radvaz even discussed, listen to this question. They used to take human remains, it's called mumia, remains from humans, and they used to mix it into certain foods. So the Radvaz uses Rabbeinu Yonah to allow it, because it goes through a process of it becoming something else, and therefore he brings about different kinds of remedies or different kinds of this which they use from snakes or from other this. He actually relies into halakha lema'aseh on this Rabbeinu Yonah. Okay? Now, I want to go back to there is a famous Har Tzvi, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank. Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, in his responses, he was asked about mixing gelatin into the ice creams. Yeah, it's years ago already. We're talking about 60 years ago plus. So they were already mixing into ice creams gelatin. And gelatin was made from bones, skins. It says meragle chazirim, from the legs of pigs, skins, calves, different materials of hard materials of the animal. They used to make gelatin. So he brings to allow it. But he says providing that a professional will check in the process when they finish the process of making before they mix the gelatin in, to see whether it's fitting for dog consumption or not. He says, unless you've done, he says, this is his Lashon, Hamuram ima avak, if the powder which they processed got dried until it becomes not edible for human, that's subject to an argument, which you mentioned earlier on. But if it's not fitting for dog consumption, he says everybody will agree it's okay, because this is like what we explained, it became something else completely. It became ruined, and only then it got revived. So he says, "Ulai ya'aseh ze al yedei baki b'umanut." I suggest you get a professional, someone who understands about tastes, and you get him to make this decision. Rofeh mumche, says a doctor. I don't know why he thinks doctors, or maybe professor, maybe someone who understands about tastes. Yeah. And yedei baki l'sha'er, to assess whether this is also becomes unedible for animal consumption. So it says, "Ad sheyevarer," until you will find this out. El lehorot heter badavar. Frank says, do not allow it, but don't come against those who allow it. Just you maintain that it's not allowed until you know that someone has actually confirmed that it's because there was some halachic authorities who wanted to rely on the lenient opinions that even if it's not edible for human consumption, that's sufficient. And you can check that straight away with the powder. It's not a problem. You can see people wouldn't eat it or they would eat it. So he says, don't fight against them. But you, unless you get me a professor to make sure that this is absolutely unedible, yeah, even for animal consumption, then don't allow it. Don't use that gelatin into the ice cream. And Frank is known as the lenient opinions. Yeah, I think Rav Ovadia Yosef also brings this, and he brings the Achiezer, brings a lot of poskim who actually hold in such a way. However, look at Rav Moshe Feinstein's concern. Rav Moshe Feinstein quotes the Rambam. The Rambam says, you know, there's halacha of mixing into products things which are not pleasant to eat, which are pagum. Kvar bi'arnu, we've already explained. She'ib natan davar asur. If you mix into a product something which is asur, bedavar mutar, everything becomes asur. That's only when it enhances the product. But if it spoils the product, you put rubbish into food, doesn't make it better, makes it more disgusting. So it's called pogem. Says the Rambam, vehifsid ta'amo, and you lost from its good taste, it spoiled the taste you put it in. Harei ze mutar. That's mutar. What says behu, that's providing sheyeh pogem mitchila v'ad hasof. That's providing that it remains like that. Avalim pagam batchila, but when you put it, it made it not nice, and eventually it became better. So now the end product is perfectly good. That means it has to remain in a state that whilst you're having it, it's disgusting. But if it's not, doesn't remain disgusting, and it becomes better because of the ingredients you put it with, then it says the Rambam, that doesn't help. Says Rabbi Feinstein, same thing would apply. Says, I don't understand this process which you're telling with the gelatin. Yeah, I'll read you out the Lashon. In the process of manufacturing this gelatin, yes, it becomes unedible. It becomes something which even dogs perhaps wouldn't eat. However, they're only preparing it to make it a good product, i.e., to use it for the benefit of enhancing other products. So even though it goes through a process of becoming something which is not nice, but this is like the Rambam. It's sofo le'ashbiach. It says, lo nitvatel mishem ochel. It doesn't become not food because it goes through a state of being not edible. Because your intention of making it that stage is in order to revive it again for human consumption. What the Talmud spoke about is something which you didn't want to eat. It became disgusting. So that remains like that forever and ever. But something which you did that process only in order to make it a better product, and that's what you do. Now we're going to swim to my fish skin.
Isn't that different to the collagen?
Oh yeah, tell you, the collagen is worse. כשהוא ראוי וטוב לאכילה, ויש קצת לדמות זה, we can compare this to what the Rambam says, which I just read, it's brought in Shulchan Aruch in 103, Kuf Gimel Sif Beit. So he says, that's the whole reason why they go through the process is in order to revive it again. Not only he holds like that, Dayan Weiss in his responses, Minhat Yitzchak, he was asked in England, when he was living in England, about the gelatin. A long time ago, he was in Manchester. And he said the whole process is only to, now let's get to the collagen now. The collagen, how does it work? They need to get the fish skin. Now fish skin, we concluded that it's perfectly edible. So it's part, we prove from the Rambam, that is part of the skin of the, which is eaten usually, and things which are eating together with the flesh are considered like part of the flesh, unlike animal skin. Animal skin is not really something which is so edible. So therefore it's not considered like part of it. It says the fish skin, what they do is, they dry it up completely, and they want to get rid of any of what's not skin. They want to get rid of it. So they go through this process of salting it for days in order to separate anything which is not the fish skin. So at the end of the day, you're left just with the fish skin. That in itself is then turned into a form of a powder. Yeah, they dry it up and then they turn it into a powder, and that's the collagen which we have today, which they mix it in, or they actually have collagen drink, which is the main thing. You just put
מה זה קולגן בעברית?
collagen.
מה זה?
או פריג' דר. collagen. זה חומר של האור של הדג.
מה הוא עושה?
It helps for the skin apparently. זה עוזר לאור, שתראה יותר צעיר. Huh? The nails, it gives you a lot of vitamins,
They use it
which helps you for your Huh?
Cosmetic, not food. Like,
Yeah.
Food
Yeah.
as well. Food.
What?
You have it in food as well.
It's good for your arthritis.
Has a, it's in everything. It's in meat. Good for your.
You mean it's generally in your food which you eat day
Yeah,
to day?
It's in
Say chicken soup.
But this is concentrated. You want people to have the.
It's in chicken soup. You have chicken soup. It's jelly. That's collagen.
It's like gelatin, collagen.
That's
Gelatin.
jelly with the
That's-
chicken
yeah.
soup. Yeah.
That makes it the most stiff.
Collagen.
Oh,
Yeah.
The most
That is the
That is
collagen.
collagen. When you boil chicken soup for 3 hours, how like the jelly.
Right. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's not coming from things which are soup.
Yeah.
You're saying the concept of collagen is
It comes
everywhere.
everywhere.
It's in a lot of products.
Meat.
A lot of
products, animal
Right. So let's summarize a little bit what we have here. Right? The only advantage we can think of with the collagen is the fact that people are having it pure for health reasons. Yeah? They're not having it to enhance the food which they're having. They're not having it to help the product. Gelatin is put into foods to make the product better. Here, they're helping you swallow that not pleasant product in a good way.
Disguise it.
But really, it's not coming to help what you're eating. It's because you want to take this in, so it could be better, because your intention is not, it doesn't become sofol hashbiach like the Rambam says. You put it into an ingredient, into a product, it makes the product better, so therefore it becomes like sheva, like a function had the issue of the gelatin. Here, the product is really very hard to eat it. It's not pleasant. And you want to swallow, not to enhance the food which you want, you want to swallow it for health reasons. So it's debateful. The reason why we allowed the situation of the colon, because it's not verified that it comes from non-kosher fish. In fact, based on the information which we were given, majority of the fish which they take the skins for this use are kosher fish.
Only this one.
Huh? Only this company, which we've actually given a share to, we've allowed it, yeah? Because based on their information which they've given us, they've presented us that they don't take it from places, and only a minority of times will they have catfish or anything, and that's not so sure. So therefore, based on that safek, which you can't put your finger on it, yeah, whether it's this or that, and based on all the opinions which we bought, the Radvaz, and Rabbeinu Yonah, the way it's understood by many, then there's room to be lenient. But if you're 100% sure that this collagen comes from a fish which is not kosher, then it'll be subject to an argument between Rav Moshe Feinstein and the Minchat Yitzchak, who hold that since here the end product is in a good state, and you can eat it, and you made it, I would say, you made it able, the people should be able to drink it comfortably, then it will be considered what the Rambam says, sofol hashbiach. It's not pagum. When you put something which is doesn't taste good, and you mix it into the food, it never becomes pleasant. It remains like that. But when you make it pleasant and and that's the purpose why you do it, then that's considered sofol hashbiach, which the Rambam is not allowed. Now many opinions allow it, so we can't say it's asur. We can't say, many opinions hold, once it becomes something which is unedible for animal consumption, but then you have to verify it's not edible for animal consumption. And I said that today it's quite hard to verify this matter because dogs are spoiled. It's very hard to know that. So you'll have to ask, like Frank says, you have to ask professionals whether animals would think of eating such things. And it's very hard to know that. And if we can't just rely and say, you know what, oh, it's in a powdery form, or it's not anymore, it's flavorless, but who says the dog won't eat it? Yeah? So that's not clear you'd be allowed to, based on that. Yeah? Other than the whole discussion there about something which, what to what level? Yeah, but we're going with like, you can rely on the linear, like a Pri Hadash. The Pri Hadash says that even if it's still fit for animal consumption, so long as it's not fit for human consumption, it's still allowed. So to come along and say those people who are relying on the leniency are wrong, we can't say that because they have who to rely on. But what we should be doing is we should be well away from this issue, because if I look at when it comes to the Pri Hadash, seems to be a minority, and in fact an individual opinion. Not many agree to his theory, and most hold it. If it's not biblically, it's just rabbinically prohibited to have something which is still fitting for animal consumption. So unless you know for a fact that the animals would not eat that, then you won't be able to. And then you've got Rabbi Feinstein and Rabbi Weiss who step in and say, even if it's not fitting for dog consumption, but if you revive it afterwards, if some form you make it pleasant to eat, it's called pogem ulebasof mashbiach, for whatever reason. Either because you want it for your vitamins, or either you want it for anything to gel something or to make something stiff. You want it for a purpose. So it becomes usable for eating purposes, that's already not considered mutar. So in a nutshell, that's what we came up with. So we'll end the shiur today.
But that you say, we cannot know